Arratsaldeon eta eskerrik asko etortzeagatik. Buenas tardes, muchas gracias por venir. Va a inaugurar el congreso y da la bienvenida Juan José Echevarría, rector de la Universidad de Deusto. Juanjo.
Pues muy buenas tardes a todas y a todos. Arratsaldeon, atseinadia da Deustoko Unibertsitatera ongi etorri ematea eta eskerrak ematea gaur Aspiring Women Leaders in the Digital Era ekimenaren 10. edizioaren irekiera ekitaldian gurekin egoteagatik. Gure unibertsitatearentzat orea da topaketa honen egoitza izatea. Izan ere, azken hamarkadan, lidergoan, berrikuntzan eta teknologian nazioarteko erreferentziazko gune bihurtu eta sendotu da. Como decía, hoy nuestra universidad se convierte en epicentro del talento y el compromiso social. Me enorgullece saludar a Ainara Basurco, a Conchi Claver, a Elizabeth García Caballero, cuya labor en nuestras instituciones siempre digo que es fundamental para el progreso de nuestro territorio. A Susana Solís, que nos aporta la necesaria perspectiva europea, y a mi colega también, Garbiñe Henry, motor incansable de la innovación en esta universidad. Es igualmente un placer recibir a Teresa Alarcos Tamayo, fundadora e impulsadora de este evento, a la coronel también Margarita Pardo, ejemplos extraordinarios, yo diría, de liderazgo y determinación que nos inspiran a seguir seguramente muchas veces rompiendo barreras. A todos ustedes, gracias por aceptar también nuestra invitación. Su presencia aquí no solo honra a esta institución, sino que refuerza nuestra misión de construir entre todos y todas una sociedad seguramente más avanzada y más justa. Esta 10ª edición tiene además un valor especial. Seguramente 10 años no es solo una cifra redonda, son el reflejo de una trayectoria sostenida, de una comunidad que ha crecido y se ha fortalecido y de un compromiso firme con la visibilización del talento femenino en ámbitos clave para el presente y el futuro de nuestra sociedad. Que hoy se reúnan aquí personas procedentes de más de 29 países es una muestra clara de este impacto y de la relevancia global de este foro. El lema que nos acompaña este año, Building the Future Together, resume con gran acierto el espíritu de este encuentro. El futuro no se construye desde miradas únicas, ni desde posiciones aisladas. Se construye desde la cooperación entre personas, organizaciones, instituciones y territorios. Y en un momento de profundos cambios tecnológicos como el que vivimos, esta idea de construcción compartida resulta más necesaria que nunca. Las mesas redondas, charlas y debates que conforman la agenda de estas 2 jornadas abordan algunos de los grandes retos y oportunidades de nuestro tiempo. Hablaremos de cómo la inteligencia artificial está evolucionando y transformando seguramente los modelos de decisión y liderazgo, de los desafíos que plantea la ciberseguridad en un entorno cada vez más interconectado, de las posibilidades que abren tecnologías emergentes como el quantum computing, el blockchain o la tokenización, y de nuevas formas de inversión capaces de generar valor económico y social de manera sostenible. Pero más allá de las tecnologías concretas, este foro pone el foco en algo esencial, algo fundamental, las personas. En el talento que hace posible la innovación, en la diversidad de miradas que enriquece las decisiones y en la necesidad de impulsar liderazgos capaces de integrar conocimiento técnico con valores, visión estratégica y también compromiso social. Por eso me gustaría señalar aquí que en este sentido el liderazgo femenino no es solo una cuestión de equidad, sino una auténtica oportunidad para construir organizaciones, ecosistemas y sociedades más sólidas, más inclusivas y mejor preparadas para afrontar la complejidad del presente. Como universidad, creemos firmemente que el talento necesita espacios donde encontrarse, dialogar, proyectarse, espacios donde el conocimiento académico se cruce con la experiencia profesional, donde las startups dialoguen con las grandes corporaciones, donde la academia, las instituciones públicas y el sector privado puedan generar alianzas con impacto real. Eso es precisamente el tipo de espacio que hoy se abre aquí. La Universidad de Deusto entiende su misión como algo que va más allá de la formación de buenos profesionales. Aspiramos a contribuir a la formación de personas capaces de liderar con responsabilidad, de innovar con propósito y de poner su talento al servicio de un desarrollo económico y social más justo y sostenible. Por eso, acoger un encuentro como Inspiring Women Leaders in the Digital Era encaja plenamente con nuestra vocación y con nuestra manera de entender el papel de la universidad en la sociedad. Quiero agradecer de manera especial a Women Startup Community y Deusto Emprende el trabajo, la visión y el esfuerzo que hay detrás de la organización de este evento, así como a todas las instituciones, entidades colaboradoras, ponentes y startups que hacen posible un programa de altísimo nivel. Su implicación demuestra que cuando se alinean talento, propósito y cooperación, se generan oportunidades reales de transformación. Erronka handien aroa bizi dugu, baina baita aukera handien aroa ere. Teknologia ondo bideratuz gero, bizitzak hobetzeko, arrakalak murrizteko eta etorkizuna eraikitzeko palanka boteretsua izan daiteke. Horretarako lidergoa behar dugu eta askotako talentua behar dugu eta hau bezalako topaguneak behar ditugu elkarrekin pentsatzeko, elkarrekin ikasteko eta elkarrekin aurrera egiteko. Les deseo pues unas jornadas muy inspiradoras, llenas de diálogo, aprendizaje y nuevas conexiones. Eskerrik asko, muchas gracias, hemen egoteagatik, eta ongi etorri beroa ematen dizuet Deustuko Unibertsitatera. Eskerrik asko.
Eskerrik asko, rector. Bueno, pues ahora comenzamos con la mesa institucional y la primera persona que va a intervenir, Teresa Alarcos Tamayo, la consejera independiente y presidenta de Inspiring Women Leaders.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Estoy encantada de estar en este precioso Paraninfo. Muchísimas gracias al excelentísimo rector, a todo el equipo de Deusto Emprende por ayudarnos a acogernos en este espacio tan maravilloso. Excelentísimas autoridades, muchas gracias por apoyarnos. Concejala de Bilbao, de Valladolid, diputada Elisabetta, es que estamos emocionadas de tener un espacio donde alzar la voz y donde no se nos acalle, donde nuestras opiniones sean tenidas en cuenta. Llevamos 10 años construyendo el futuro porque hace 10 años solo hablábamos de inteligencia artificial. En el primer encuentro que hicimos, todas las startups y todas las grandes corporaciones creían crear puentes entre ellos y empresas de Big Data, la incipiente inteligencia artificial. Pero después vino blockchain y nos asociamos, hicimos una alianza estratégica con la Asociación Española de Blockchain y también con asociaciones fuera de España. Pero después vino realidad aumentada, realidad virtual, la robótica, que tanto va a dar que hablar porque va a haber más robots casi que personas, pero también quantum computing y ahora últimamente la geopolítica, que impacta en la estrategia de las empresas, en su crecimiento y en nuestro bienestar. Todo ello lo hemos querido agrupar uniendo inversores, corporaciones, instituciones y academia, que juntos tenemos que construir este futuro y alinearnos para usar esta tecnología para el bien, porque como en todos los, digamos, innovaciones tecnológicas siempre está el lado oscuro y el lado bueno. Y nosotros queremos enseñar ese lado bueno que construye sociedades que apoyan industria, que hacen que las sociedades tengan más bienestar y que hacen que estemos aquí compartiendo conocimiento, creando red y creando cosas nuevas para solucionar los problemas que tenemos. Y nada más quería deciros como anécdota que hemos impactado a 10.000 personas, a más de 10.000 personas. Hemos dado 134 becas, hemos conseguido dar un altavoz a mujeres que tienen proyectos emprendedores a más de 1.000. En estos 10 años hemos realizado desde el primer momento en streaming y traducido a inglés para que tuviera impacto internacional, porque nosotras hemos hecho el primer estudio en España de emprendimiento femenino disruptor y siempre dicen los estudios que las startups se inician internacionales. Entonces, nosotras somos internacionales también. Somos una startup que tiene impacto, que es non-profit, pero que no tiene ánimo tampoco de pérdida. Es non-profit, pero que se sostiene en el tiempo porque llevamos 10 años impactando. Y no olviden una cosa, nosotras tenemos sueños, nadie nos lo va a quitar y vamos a seguir luchando para que este foro siga continuando y sigamos relacionándonos con muchos países, con muchas iniciativas y con muchas personas como vosotros que lo apoyáis. Así que muchísimas gracias, eskerrik asko, y bueno, ya me siento. Gracias, cariño.
Muchas gracias, Teresa. Bueno, damos la palabra a continuación a Elizabeth García Caballero, directora de Transformación Digital del Gobierno Vasco.
Arratsaldeon guztioi eta mila esker gonbidapen honengatik. Benetan plazerra da gaur hemen egotea Deustoko Unibertsitatean Inspiring Women Leaders in the Digital Eraren 10. urteurren honetan. 10 años creando referentes, conversación y comunidad. Gracias, Teresa, gracias a toda la comunidad, a la Universidad de Deusto y a todos y todas las personas e iniciativas que habéis hecho posible que este espacio siga vivo después de una década. Porque aunque es verdad que hemos avanzado considerablemente, todavía queda mucho camino por recorrer. Muchas mujeres ni siquiera se plantean una carrera tecnológica y sabemos que esto empieza muy pronto. A los 12 años muchas niñas ya han descartado opciones profesionales que les llevarían a estar hoy, por ejemplo, presentes en eventos como este. Desde el Gobierno vasco llevamos tiempo intentando responder a una pregunta sencilla pero compleja a la vez, y es que ¿la igualdad es realmente una cuestión social o es también una cuestión de competitividad? Hace 3 años analizamos casi 500 empresas industriales vascas y lo contrastamos también fuera. La conclusión fue clara y sigue siendo hoy mismo también muy similar. Las empresas más igualitarias funcionan mejor. Es verdad que la presencia de mujeres en la industria no ha cambiado tanto como nos gustaría. De hecho, en el Plan de Industria 2030, uno de los proyectos transformadores con liderazgo público va dirigido en esta línea para impulsar precisamente esta carencia y poder enriquecerla. Pero también es verdad que muchas empresas están empezando a hacerlo mejor. Y mejor es más conciliación, más políticas reales y más compromiso. Y algunas de estas empresas ya lo han entendido del todo o lo han entendido de una forma bastante más avanzada. Atraer talento femenino no es una cuestión de imagen, es una decisión estratégica dentro de la organización. Desde lo público podemos aportar datos, herramientas y apoyo, pero este reto solo se resuelve si empresas, educación, sociedad empujamos en la misma dirección, al igual que lo estamos haciendo hoy entre todas y todos, porque al final va de algo muy claro. Si queremos una mejor industria y un mejor futuro digital, no podemos desperdiciar el talento. Eskerrik asko guztioi eta gozatu jardunaldiaz datozen egunetan. Eskerrik asko.
Eskerrik asko, Elisabete. Bueno, a continuación nos va a dedicar unas palabras Conchi Claver, la concejala del área de Desarrollo Económico, Comercio, Turismo y Empleo del Ayuntamiento de Bilbao. Conchi.
Arratsaldeon guztioi eta ongi etorri Bilbora. Welcome to Bilbao. Bienvenidas y bienvenidos a nuestra ciudad y un saludo especial también para quienes nos siguen a través de streaming. Eskerrik asko, desde luego, a todas las personas organizadoras de este foro y a la Universidad de Deusto, siempre una gran aliada. Topaketa hau modu naturalean dator bat Bilborekin. Garapena ulertzeko dugun moduarekin. Etorkizun partekatua, talentua, aukera berdintasunak eta munduari ambizioz baina sustraiak galdu gabe begiratzen dion ekonomiak bultzatua. Bai egun hauetan Bilbon inspirazioa, loturak eta ideia berriak aurkitzea espero dugu. Eta eskerrik asko gure hiria berriro aukeratzeagatik. Y es que es un verdadero placer acoger en Bilbao esta 10ª edición del Foro Internacional Mujeres Inspiradoras Líderes en la Era Digital. Un encuentro de alto valor por todo lo que conlleva y porque representa una simbiosis con la que nos sentimos perfectamente identificadas en Bilbao. Y es esa unión entre la tradición, la tecnología, conocimiento e innovación para poder construir así de la mano el futuro que deseamos. Bilbok foro hau hartu du, halako espazioek zer garen eta zer izaten jarraitu nahi dugun islatzen dutelako. Y es que somos una ciudad de valores guiada por una carta de valores que sitúa en el centro, entre otros aspectos, la igualdad, la innovación responsable, la diversidad y la solidaridad. Principios que conectan directamente con la Agenda 2030 y con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, especialmente con aquellos que promueven la inclusión social, la igualdad de género, la educación de calidad y el desarrollo económico sostenible. Por eso, encuentros internacionales como el que hoy inauguramos encuentran en Bilbao un aliado natural. Encuentran una ciudad comprometida con avanzar sin dejar a nadie atrás y con construir ese futuro desde la igualdad y el talento compartido. Estos 2 días se van a abordar ámbitos tan determinantes y específicos, ya se han dicho, como la inteligencia artificial, la computación cuántica, la ciberseguridad, el blockchain, la inversión en innovación o el liderazgo diverso. Y este foro lo hace desde una convicción plena que compartimos también desde el Ayuntamiento. Y no es otra más que el progreso tecnológico solamente tiene sentido si se sostiene sobre una perspectiva básica y profunda de igualdad, una mirada humanista y una cultura de valores. Y es precisamente esa combinación la que permite construir un futuro que sea más avanzado, más inclusivo, más justo y más centrado en las personas. Y además, este foro vuelve a Bilbao bajo un lema que no puede ser más oportuno, construyendo el futuro en común. Porque efectivamente los grandes desafíos de nuestra era, como la transformación digital, la sostenibilidad, la equidad o el desarrollo económico sostenible, solo pueden abordarse desde la colaboración y desde la gobernanza colaborativa. Líderes de más de 29 países, startups, corporaciones, inversores, academia e instituciones públicas se unen para impulsar la colaboración y generar oportunidades en el ecosistema digital global. Y esta manera es la que entendemos que es necesaria para poder avanzar conjuntamente sumando esfuerzos. Y vuelvo a hacer hincapié y subrayado en el modelo de la gobernanza colaborativa. Lo he dicho al comienzo de mi intervención, para Bilbao es un orgullo volver a ser sede de este foro, que ya lo fue en la 8ª edición, porque esta ciudad sabe por experiencia propia que la transformación es posible, pero es posible cuando combinan visión, alianzas y valentía. Bilbao es hoy, y todos lo saben, un referente internacional de renovación urbana, innovación y calidad de vida. Pero desde luego no olvida su pasado, no olvida que su progreso se ha construido sobre una fuerte base industrial, sobre pymes y tejido industrial, y su capacidad de emprender y generar valor siempre desde lo local. La era digital exige un liderazgo capaz de anticipar transformar y humanizar el cambio. Y en ese camino es imprescindible que las mujeres sigamos dando pasos en firme hacia adelante. Mujeres líderes están demostrando hoy y día tras día que pueden impulsar transformaciones profundas, abrir nuevas oportunidades y guiar procesos complejos con una mirada inclusiva y colaborativa. Y reconocer y potenciar este talento ya no es una opción, es una necesidad para construir un futuro competitivo, equilibrado y sostenible. Lo compartía ahora mismo con Teresa, hoy hemos inaugurado y acogido también en esta ciudad el Congreso Estatal de Industria y me sorprendía pues, la escasez de figuras femeninas, ¿verdad? Ainara, tú también has estado. Bueno, pues un deseo, que el próximo congreso de este tipo que se celebre aquí tenga una presencia mucho más femenina, así que este deseo que siga construyendo ese futuro en común y que sigamos pudiendo liderar la era digital también en común. Eskerrik asko guztioi.
Eskerrik asko, Conchi. Bueno, pues cierra la mesa institucional Ainara Basurco, la diputada foral del Departamento de Promoción Económica de la Diputación Foral de Bizkaia.
Deustuko Unibertsitateko errektore jauna, Bilboko Udaleko zinegotzi anderea, Eusko Jaurlaritzako zuzendari anderea, Teresa Alarkoz eta bere lantalde osoa, eta bertora hurbildu zareten guztioi, jaun Andreoi, arratsaldeon eta ongi etorriak. Hasteko, eskerrik asko, antolatzaileei jardunaldi berezi honen inaugurazioan hitza hartzeko aukera emateagatik. Ore handia da, Inspiring Women Leaders in the Digital Era izeneko topaketa honetan berriro parte hartzea. Ekitaldi honek urtez urte emakume indartsu, erreferente eta inspiratzaileak batzen ditu. Eta ezinbesteko espazio bihurtu da aro digitaleko emakumeen lidergoari buruz elkarrekin hausnartzeko, jakintza partekatzeko eta aurrera egiteko. Quiero comenzar agradeciendo la invitación para participar en la inauguración de esta jornada tan especial. Decía que es un honor formar parte de Inspiring Women Leaders in the Digital Era, un encuentro que reúne año tras año a mujeres fuertes, referentes e inspiradoras y que se ha consolidado como un espacio imprescindible para reflexionar, compartir y avanzar juntas en el liderazgo femenino en la era digital. Listo. Listo. Bueno, estaba dando las gracias por participar y por la invitación. Bueno, permítame también, en primer lugar, felicitar a Startup Community por la organización de este congreso y muy especialmente por celebrar 10 años de trayectoria impulsando el emprendimiento, la innovación y el liderazgo femenino. 10 años construyendo comunidad, generando oportunidades y demostrando que el talento necesita espacios como este para crecer, conectarse y tener impacto. Mi enhorabuena por el aniversario y mi agradecimiento por seguir empujando una agenda tan necesaria. I also want to extend a warm welcome to all those joining us from outside Bizkaia. I hope you will have the opportunity not only to participate in a high-level program, but also to get to know our region, our business ecosystem, our high capacity for innovation, and our commitment to advance sustainable and values-based economic development, with a public-private collaboration model at its core. Bizkaia is a territory open to international talent, collaboration, and high-impact projects. I trust that this visit will be an invitation to return or to stay. Como decía Conchi, llego a esta jornada desde el Congreso Nacional de Industria que se está celebrando a pocos metros de aquí, en el Palacio Euskalduna, un foro estratégico, sin duda, en el que me ha llamado poderosamente la atención, como a ella, que poco más del 10% de las personas que interveníamos como ponentes éramos mujeres. Esto no es anecdótico, refleja que todavía existen desequilibrios importantes en los espacios donde se decide el futuro industrial, tecnológico y económico, y precisamente por eso encuentros como los de hoy son tan relevantes, porque aquí las mujeres no somos una excepción, somos las protagonistas. Kongresu honetan, aipatutako kongresuan, teknologia kuantikoari buruzko mahai inguru batean parte hartu dut. Teknologia disruptiboa, esparru askotan status quoa aldatzera deitua. Kuantikak paradigma berria dakar industrian, segurtasun aldetik, prozesuen optimizazioari dagokionez, material berrien garapenari dagokionez eta bar. Bizkaian, bikain ekimenaz eta BuzzQ estrategiaren baitan, kuantikaren inguruan ekosistema sendoa ari gara eraikitzen. Gure industria, teknologia honek ekarri dizazkiokeen abantaila eta aukeren onuradun izan dadin. Porque desde la Diputación Foral de Vizcaya trabajamos para impulsar la competitividad empresarial, apostando por la innovación, la digitalización, la sostenibilidad y el talento. Y en este camino, los datos de ejecución de las ayudas, las subvenciones a las empresas del año pasado nos ofrecen motivos para el optimismo, pero también para la reflexión. Existe una presencia significativa de liderazgo femenino en varios de nuestros programas de ayuda, especialmente en aquellos vinculados al emprendimiento innovador, las industrias culturales y creativas y la transición verde. Así, los proyectos liderados por mujeres representan el 60% del programa Vizcaya Creativa y el 27% en el área de proyectos empresariales innovadores del programa de creación de empresas innovadoras. Estos datos evidencian el peso destacado del liderazgo femenino en las fases tempranas y en sectores creativos y emergentes, donde se está gestando buena parte del futuro económico. En las líneas relacionadas con la sostenibilidad y la transformación medioambiental, la participación de mujeres alcanza porcentajes relevantes, más del 27% en inversiones verdes y más de un 28% en proyectos de innovación medioambiental y economía circular. Esto apunta a una mayor presencia de mujeres liderando proyectos empresariales ligados a la transición verde, uno de los grandes retos y oportunidades de nuestro tiempo. En los programas de innovación e inversión de mayor complejidad tecnológica, la participación femenina también es significativa, con un 25% de proyectos liderados por mujeres en el programa 3i de inversiones y un 13% en el programa 2i de innovación en producto y en procesos, que concentran iniciativas de mayor intensidad tecnológica e inversión del departamento. En el ámbito de la digitalización avanzada, la presencia de mujeres al frente de proyectos se sitúa en un 18% y en internacionalización en un 21%. ¿Qué reflejan estos datos? En conjunto, revelan un ecosistema empresarial cada vez más diverso, pero ponen de manifiesto que la brecha de género persiste, especialmente en los ámbitos de innovación industrial avanzada, digitalización compleja e inversiones de mayor escala, que son precisamente los espacios estratégicos para la competitividad y transformación económica del territorio. Por eso, nuestro compromiso es claro. Vamos a seguir trabajando para ampliar el acceso de las mujeres a estos ámbitos, eliminar barreras visibles e invisibles y generar las condiciones necesarias para que el talento femenino no solo participe, sino que lidere. Horrelako jardunaldiek gogoratzen digute emakumeen lidergoa ez dela joera bat, premia bat baizik. Aniztasuna ez dela osagarri bat, lehiatzeko abantaila baizik. Eta eraiki nahi dugun etorkizuna, hain zuzen ere, bide horretik eraiki behar dugula. Posible izan dadin, denok eraiki behar dugula, eta horrek lurralde berritzaileago eta jasangarriago bat egingo du. Eskerrik asko benetan guztioi hemen egoteagatik, gu guztiok inspiratzeagatik, eta baita bidea zabaltzen jarraitzeagatik. Jardunaldia izan dadila beste behin ere, abia da, velozidadea hartzeko eta gogoetarako eta ekintzarako topagunea. Eskerrik asko eta disfruta dezagula.
Eskerrik asko, Ainara. Bueno, pues muchas gracias por tan interesantes palabras y reflexiones. Y ahora vamos a seguir con el programa y le doy la palabra a Teresa.
Tenemos unas palabras del profesor Colino, que es former president de la Real Academia de Ingeniería, que es un firme creyente de que la diversidad crea valor y que tiene que haber más mujeres en el ámbito. Y nos ha... tengo que dar aquí. Nos ha trasladado unas palabras. Él no ha podido venir. No sé. No funciona.
Buenas tardes. Es un placer para mí asistir a esta reunión y me gustaría asistir presencialmente, pero por motivos médicos no puedo salir de Madrid. Quisiera agradecer a los organizadores, la Universidad de Deusto, el Parlamento Europeo y a Teresa Larcos que me hayan invitado a esta reunión. En el mundo occidental, en España, necesitamos emprendedores. Tenemos muy pocos emprendedores. Y las mujeres son la mitad de la población. Necesitamos que las mujeres sean emprendedoras. Sé que desde la Real Academia de Ingeniería sabemos que es muy difícil. Y por eso siempre hemos apoyado las actividades que realiza WU Startup Community para promocionar que las mujeres actúen en actividades de innovación. Muchas gracias.
Pues nada, les damos las gracias porque ha hecho un esfuerzo enorme y queremos hacer un tributo a Jürgen Fueking, que fue el subdirector de la Oficina del Parlamento Europeo, porque tristemente ha fallecido muy joven y siempre ha apoyado todas nuestras iniciativas. Así que le damos un aplauso y un tributo para una persona que nos ha apoyado desde hace más de 10 años. Y bueno, tiene la palabra doña Julia Díaz, directora de Data Science de Repsol.
Bueno, yo me voy a permitir ser un poco informal y para explicar en cuanto a yo tengo buena voz, o sea que seguro que se me escucha, pero así se me escucha mucho mejor. Vale, pues decía que me iba a permitir ser un poco informal porque yo voy a hablar de inteligencia artificial. Para mí es un auténtico placer estar aquí con todos ustedes y estar en el Paraninfo de esta universidad, que es precioso. Y yo quiero pues hablar si puedo pasar las diapositivas, que me haré un lío. No. Yo quiero hablar de inteligencia artificial. Y de inteligencia artificial en Repsol, pero primero yo me voy a permitir hablar de la inteligencia artificial en la academia y en la evolución, ¿no? Y seguro que si pregunto qué es la inteligencia artificial y no he puesto esta diapositiva, o por favor no la miren, pues pensarán que la inteligencia artificial es ChatGPT, ¿no? O Gemini o similar. Pero no, los que llevamos ya mucho tiempo en el mercado sabemos que la inteligencia artificial empezó en 1950, bueno, empezó a apuntar maneras en el 1950 con las denominadas máquinas de Turing, que todos ustedes conocen, ¿no? Esas máquinas que empezaron a ver que aprendiendo sobre los datos, pues apuntaba maneras y podíamos obtener conocimiento, ¿no? Hasta el año 1956, en la conferencia que aparece aquí con grandes gurús de la inteligencia artificial, en una escuela de verano, que es donde los investigadores estamos tranquilos, pues surgió en esa conferencia de Dartmouth el término de inteligencia artificial. Y de repente, los que ya nos incorporamos, los que tenemos juventud acumulada y nos incorporamos al mercado con el objetivo de hacer nuestra carrera en esta tecnología, en la inteligencia artificial, pues estábamos un poco despistados, porque empezamos haciendo los primeros sistemas expertos, disciplina de la inteligencia artificial, y de repente no entendíamos nada, porque solo veíamos la inteligencia artificial en las películas asociadas a los robots que no sabíamos si venían a ayudarnos a matarnos, o en libros de ciencia ficción, o en algún sistema experto aislado. ¿Qué estaba ocurriendo? Pues estábamos en el mundo de Big Data. Todo el mundo estaba subiendo sus datos a la nube, pasando del on-premise a la nube. La academia, por otra parte, estaba llevando a cabo investigación en todos los algoritmos y se estaba evolucionando también en las capacidades de cómputo, ¿no?
Datos, algoritmos, capacidades de cómputo. Recuerden estos términos, luego veremos por qué. ¿Qué ocurrió? Queda muy bonito el 2010, pero la publicación de The Economist es del 2017, donde se decía que los datos eran el nuevo petróleo. ¿Recuerdan que trabajo en Repsol? Pues efectivamente los datos son el nuevo petróleo. Y todas aquellas empresas que aparecen aquí con el logo, no estaba Repsol, pero también estaba recogiendo datos en la nube y en asociación con las universidades, bueno, pues hicieron eco de esta componente, de este cóctel de esos tres conceptos, ¿no? Y empezaron a explotar todas las aplicaciones de inteligencia artificial que han estado conviviendo con nosotros en nuestro día a día previo a ChatGPT. Y claro, la Unión Europea pues empezó a decir, esto está creciendo enormemente, hay que regular. ¿Qué no quiere decir, qué quiere decir, vamos a decirlo en positivo, pues poner unas reglas del juego, ¿vale? No quiere decir que no se pueda hacer inteligencia artificial, sino que quiere establecer unas reglas del juego en la zona Europa, en todos aquellos países que colaboren en la zona Europa. Y surgió el Reglamento de Inteligencia Artificial, publicado ya oficialmente en agosto del 2024. Y ahora sí, surgió ChatGPT en 2023 y cambió totalmente nuestra vida. Entonces, ¿la inteligencia artificial es ChatGPT o Gemini? No, ya tenemos claro que está en nuestro día a día desde hace muchos años y además convive la denominada inteligencia artificial tradicional con la generativa, siendo más o menos el 80% de las acciones que experimentamos de inteligencia artificial no generativa y el 20% de inteligencia artificial generativa. Vale, pues seguimos con definiciones. En el 2020, la Unión Europea estableció el libro blanco en el que identificaba distintas definiciones y entre ellas, para mí, la primera es perfecta, porque hace referencia a los tres componentes de la inteligencia artificial: los datos, los algoritmos y las capacidades de cómputo. Cuando hablamos de inteligencia artificial, hablamos de modelos, que es la mezcla de datos y algoritmos, sí, en un sitio. Si cambio el algoritmo sobre los mismos datos, establezco otro modelo. Y si resulta que tengo muchísimos datos en una máquina enorme, pues a lo mejor tengo un modelo preentrenado que es el LLM, el Large Language Model, que está detrás de la IA generativa. Las siguientes definiciones lo que hacen es complementar esta. Y complementando esta, aquí en datos, algoritmos, capacidades de cómputo están todos los temas que se van a ver en este congreso, porque tendremos que hablar de quantum computing, por supuesto, de ciberseguridad, por supuesto, y de mi disciplina, que es la inteligencia artificial. Y ahora sí hablamos de la inteligencia artificial generativa, porque claro, tenemos que tener en cuenta el reglamento, por eso aparece la palabra riesgo tecnológico en IA generativa, y la palabra riesgo no quiere decir nada negativo, aunque suena fatal. Quiere decir que hay que aplicar reglas del juego y hacer las cosas bien. Y a la hora de utilizar la inteligencia artificial generativa podemos tener distintos perfiles. El primero es el de adopción. Somos adoptadores de software que aquí estamos hablando, por ejemplo, de los copilots, ¿no? De lo que estamos utilizando en nuestro día a día, ya sea a través de ChatGPT o de un copilot que llevamos a cabo y que luego integramos con nuestro sistema, ¿vale? Y aquí pues podemos hacerlo a través de código, sin código, con aplicaciones porque la inteligencia artificial generativa lo que nos permite...
Because generative AI, which allows us to do is to become, should we say, more intelligent. We can ask about things we learn how to do and carry out actions. What else can we do? We can use a large language model of a third party and adapt it to our domain. That's what's called an RAG. And it's perfect because it applies the regulation to the general purpose models, which are large language models, and not what the RAG is doing. What is the RAG? I'll give you an example from my company. In our business, we talk about pumps. Can you talk about bombs, for example, in our large language model, and also talk about hot black areas, but that's a chemical thing. So I need these large language models to understand the language that my company uses. What else can we do? We can create our own LLM, or we can fine-tune a model. As soon as we use this more complex adaptation of an LLM, we need to carry out the corresponding actions that meet the regulations of the 2nd of August last year. We can also organize a private foundational model that would involve investing a lot of money. So what is the market doing, or what's Repsol doing? Well, we adopt technology so that all our company's employees can use generative AI. We use RAG for our pumps and or our black areas, and we're starting to begin to use some open source because the regulation applies to it. And what have we done so far? So far, Repsol started a digital transformation process in 2018, divided into 2 waves. The first was till 2022. We saw that it was doing well, and so we carried on in 2023. What have we done so far? Well, firstly, the technology. I'd love to do things, but there's no point in doing things if nobody's going to use what you've created. So the first thing to do was to listen to everybody in the company, and by asking everybody what their problems were and how those problems can be solved using AI. That has led to different initiatives and KPIs. The first KPIs were these initiatives. Over 1,300, not all of them have an AI side to them, because digitizing information, centralizing it is very necessary. But in addition to these 840, these are AI-based initiatives. And over 35% are maturely operating, which just goes to show the maturity level of my company and how fun my day-to-day life is. What other indicators are there? Well, we aim to reach 0 emissions by 2050. So we can measure the tons of CO2 that are emitted in every project. And we've managed to save CO2 emissions thanks to AI. The next thing we're going to talk about quantum computing and cybersecurity, but actually what's really important for us is talent. Another indicator is the number of people that have received training and are part of these initiatives. Not just the 64 data scientists, but all of the company. And the company's had over 1,600 people involved to a larger or greater extent, either with technicians or heads of business, stages. And our company has some pretty major financial engineering. We make an investment because we know that there's going to be an economic impact. However, otherwise it's stopped, however good the idea means. And that means till 2022 had 800 million of impact. And we finished 2025 with an impact of 550 million, because investment is still there and it's still growing. So these are the just figures just from AI, what we call traditional AI, which may sound old-fashioned, but it still exists. You might be asking me, how many agents do you have? And I'll leave that for the next time you hold the IWL, and I'll be talking about that next year, because we're talking then about the different levels of compliance that we've reached. Thank you so much.
Muy bien. Pues damos paso a la primera
We're
mesa
now
redonda.
moving on to the next panel session, where we'll be talking about how talent can contribute to boards of directors. And to do so, we've got with us Annie Karagian, who's Senior Global Director at Harvard Business School. She's going to introduce the first roundtable to us, and Juan José Landazuri Palacios, who's a member of the Advisory Council of Harvard Business Review. So, enjoy.
Greetings, W Startup community. Congratulations on the 10th anniversary. And this milestone really reflects a decade of meaningful work in advancing and supporting women-led startups. Your commitment to fostering innovation, opportunity, and leadership has made a significant difference and impact on the entrepreneurial landscape. Wishing you all continued success.
Hola, arratsaldeon guztiok. Si me acompaña, por favor, Irache.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can I have Irache Andrea Teresa and Immaculada up here with me? Thank you.
Primeramente nos vamos a presentar todos.
Firstly, let's introduce everybody. My name is Juan José Landázuri. I'm an executive. I am an advisor to several companies, and I've got experience in DGs, and also as a board member, I'm an investor in startups, and I'm a member of the advisory board for 200 investors in startups. And in the field of AI, I've also been a lecturer on big data transformation innovations. So this afternoon, we've got a panel session with advisors. One person's not been able to come, but she sent us a video. She's a director of the March Bank.
Hola.
Good afternoon. My name is Irache Lasayas. I am an industrial engineer, and I start there because we'll talk about that later, about this kind of profile in boards. I've actually spent the last 16 years in the management board of several companies, and I'm the founding member of a consultancy company in which we support companies in their areas of improvement. I help the management teams and the board both in their strategic reflection and also in how to improve. I'm also an independent director of some companies, and I've recently written a book about boards and how they can add value. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be at this event. I'm hoping you can hear me. My name's Immaculada Sanchez Ramos, and I'm the president of the Spanish Association of Telecommunications Engineers in Madrid. I'm also an independent board member of the supervisory board of several organizations in Spain. I, in addition to this, have an executive side. I'm the manager for Digital Madrid at the Madrid regional government, and I've written a book together with others about how to transform boards, and I wrote specifically in this book about talent governance in general and especially in the digital field. I've done all sorts of things because you have to, when you're executive and when you work in government, you have to have your finger in several pies. And many of us here on the panel today have got a lot of youth behind us, shall we say. Good afternoon. My name's Andrea Maria Loncan. I'm the co-founder of Circular Score, a startup that helps SMEs and startups and companies to increase their contribution to Agenda 2030, and I'm also a lecturer at university in the Department of Economy and Business. My name is Teresa Larcos. I'm an independent board member of 2 startups, one in the US and one here, one on precision medicine. And I'm also a lecturer on good governance and performance. We all have met each other, that's great. Let's talk about the future of boards. When we talk about the future of boards of directors, we're really talking about the future of our companies and our businesses. And boards don't operate in a stable environment, but rather in a context in when there's continuing innovation and AI and talent that is changing the way in which value is created, decisions are taken, and how people are led. We've got at least 4 elephants in the board of directors room. The first is AI. And agents. This is something has been for the last year or so. Then we've got geopolitics as well, and Donald Trump has actually managed to interrupt everything. And then there's all the coming together of all these innovative technologies. We've got virtual reality, we've got augmented reality, Internet of Things, what Teresa said earlier, robotics, and the magazine Time has said that's the innovation of the year, because for 200 euros you've got a Chinese robot that can do all your housework for you. So this affects, of course, the boards of directors. So boards of directors now no longer there for supervisory purposes or EBITDA purposes, but rather now a clear organization of the criteria for the future and the government of the future. It's like things have changed, because everything has had to adapt because of all the elephants that are in the boardroom, shall we say. We've got 5 directors with us, with the several different kinds of experience with us. And they're here to talk to us about how they feel boards should evolve if they're still going to be strategic, accountable, and carry on creating value. There are going to be 3 sections to this talk. We've got 25 minutes, and the first section is going to be about the elephants in the room, shall we say, that have come into the boardroom. The second will be on governance and how it's affected, and third will be talking about the future. So my first question is, this surroundings, the risks and opportunities created for the board, and more specifically for your companies, and why? So perhaps if you'd like to start, Teresa. The first risk, and also an opportunity, is that a new field of value creation has been opened. Firstly, the income side of thing, and the other is savings and efficiency. A company exists to create money, and we need to, if we're going to create tools, test them rapidly, assess them, and see where they can have greatest impact. That's my first contribution. I'll allow the others to say something now. This is an important issue, and Trump has actually affected the profit in European companies by reversing decarbonization policies. But as such, I don't think European companies realize that sustainability isn't just a department, but it needs to be something that influences the whole of the board and all the businesses departments. Thank you. As I said before, there are many elephants in the issue of geostrategy. We're seeing something that has been called multi-homogeneous, multi-dominance. This is a geostrategic situation which is very dangerous. It's where there's greatest instability. And this has been very closely studied in the field of geostrategy and the other elephants that Juanjo spoke about earlier. But always behind this are technologies. These are what cause everything else. For example, when we talk about geostrategy, we always remember telecommunications. If you cut a underwater cable in the Baltic Sea, and this is a very specific example, but of course that actually affects cybersecurity and data. We need to always talk about 3 elements, and there should be 4, because there's infrastructures and networks. But this is a reality we take, or this is a given. The other elephant in the room, I think, Andrea, firstly, is that Europe has gone too far. Between black and white, there are grey areas. So responsible management of resources, I don't think anybody sensible would say that you don't need to carry this, but these aren't the 1,100 data points that are given for SMEs. I'm in charge of sustainability, and as an SME, you can't deal with it. I think we've gone too far. We've gone from something that might have been reasonable to something that no longer is. I'll now hand the floor over to Irache. Risks and opportunities are out there. How should boards evolve? Well, for me, you said that the boards are there to supervise and to look at data. And for me, it's for actually a lot more than that. They need to go back to their basics. What do boards exist for? To add value, to carry on learning, seeking out people to come onto the board and that know about the different issues, because they are there to challenge and to give a different outlook to the company. And everything that we're talking about, risks and opportunities, the board has to be there, always with their headlights on, always challenging and encouraging companies to be up to date. So I'm going back to basics. What's the board there for? To add value, and value isn't added just by supervising. Are we very exposed at the moment when we talk about talent? Is regulation everything? Is technology everything? If we had to do one single thing, where should we concentrate our efforts? Or can we not?
Yo suelo estar en empresa de tamaño más bien pequeño mediano.
I am in SMEs and
un entorno donde pues apenas hay mujeres. Yo vengo de una.
I'm in a setting in which there are very, very few women. I work for the board of a machine tool company, and they're all men, all the other directors. What challenges do I find in these companies? Well, they're all affected to a greater or less extent by the geopolitical movements. What Immaculada said. There's this fear about how they're going to about things. For me, there's a guiding thread and a concern by everybody. Talent, they cannot find the profiles for everything that they need to do. That's why returning to diversity, the need for more women in technical and technological careers, to carry on encouraging this greater interest. As for what Irache has just said, I support everything that she said. What's more, she's really said this, but just to drill down, talent needs to be dynamically adaptive, as Juanjo said earlier. Therefore, I think we talk a lot about sustainability, but actually what needs to be sustainable is knowledge. People talk about E, S, and G, but I think we should add the K for knowledge. So, they're too practical, too finalist. There are. We need to go back to the beginning. All of us that are engineering, so we say, oh, we've studied things that we don't think are useful. That's not true. We think they aren't useful, but actually, these degree courses has allowed us to carry on learning new things. So this is a reflection that I like to bear in mind. The teaching side of things. We didn't go so much to the tactical side of things, but rather to the strategical side of things. You work in a startup, and I know you're very concerned about, for example, cash 6 months from now. What do you think about the role of an advisory board or a board of directors? We're in a very dynamic and volatile environment because the market can change overnight and we need to adapt to it. We adapt to what consumers are seeking. So it's very, very important to include new specialist talent, qualified talent into companies, and this talent is coming especially from universities. We, as a student, and also as a teacher, as I am now, I think sustainability is something that is growing most. So it's not so much a theoretical talent, but practical talent. Let's move on to the second question. Implications for the board. What's missing from a board of directors? I think boards should look increasingly like startups. They need to be proactive, as Irache said. They need to have their beam lights on and their headlights on. And this is something that you see in boards. They need to be continually dialoguing with startups, but looking outside as well. The role of a director in a board isn't just somebody who's a funder, but somebody who's also learning continually and consulting youngsters and segmenting inversely with young people who have skills which traditional boards don't have to create risk plans and dynamic strategic plans so as to be able to modify things very rapidly. I worked in a telecommunications company and I remember that it was funded by investment funds. And I remember that I didn't understand certain strategic decisions. But now that I'm in boards, I work on boards, I do understand these rapid change are adaptive, as you said, Andrea. We need to know what our customers want, where we're heading, and adapt these resources rapidly to what's important. What does a board need to learn? Well, coming from Deusto, I'd say hiring people like Irache and Andrea and ourselves into our programs, because you're continually learning. In the past, if you studied a PhD, you were a star. You thought you'd learnt everything. But now you have to do all sorts of things thanks to Immaculada. You have to be listening and learning all the time. It's lifelong learning and attending events such as this one to exchange opinions and best practices and things that we did wrong. that'll make us take our opinions to other fields that we hadn't envisaged. Irache, can we have a board of directors that's also an agent? Would that work? I think it's a long way off yet. They could be used as a support to good directors, yes. But I still think it's a long way off. It really depends on the company, what the challenges are. As Teresa said, boards need to be updated all the time. And when new challenges crop up, boards need to adapt. And in this way of thinking how the board can change and how it should improve, I don't know what the role of an agent, AI agent, would be in my surroundings. I think that's still long way off. I'd prefer more technological, different profiles, people that have a culture of learning and of change, rather than entrusting everything to just AI. Of course, AI needs to be there, but that's all. Are we protecting the past, Immaculada? I think this word diversity, I now think there's a tremendous amount of mistakes being made with senior talent. They call anybody's senior nowadays. They just have to be 40. But let's imagine that when you get to 60, you're senior. But people just carry on working till in their 70s. So let's put that aside. There's a lot of technological talent lacking in boards of directors. People are worried about cybersecurity, but if you don't have a background in cybersecurity, you have no idea. So there's certain professions that have to be continually training, or medicine, such as in your case. This is by no means anything new. Lifelong learning is nothing new at all. What is new is that there's been a paradigm shift in the speed of this lifelong learning. That is true. What we need in boards is a mix of background, experience, and origins of people, and also the famous gender diversity, but mainly much technological talent, which is very lacking, experiences from different economic sectors, and of course, as Irache said earlier, and you did too during the introduction, a board has the responsibility of strategy. They need to work towards the future, not the past. I'm going to give you the title of my book, How Do You Change a Board? And I propose a methodology that includes how to govern the knowledge in a company, which is actually the total of the knowledge of everybody in the company, and how can you update that? I really don't understand when people start saying, oh, the organization has taken 70 courses or participated in 40 surveys. That doesn't increase the knowledge of the company. In the same way that you look at a profit and loss account, the board should be also looking at how the organization has increased its knowledge at the same time. In the same way that you have financial capital, and that needs to be assessed, intellectual capital needs to be assessed and governed. There should be no board that doesn't have this item on the agenda. I don't know if I'm being a little bit drastic with my words. Immaculada, one of the things that many youngsters repeat, if I'm studying, then AI is just going to take my job away from me. This is one of the concerns that many youngsters have today. And not just youngsters, but also seniors that have been in their jobs for years. But I don't think AI has come to take work away from us. We need to look at what happened in the past. But also we need to adapt to a new future and use AI to do away with automatic repetitive tasks that don't add much value, but rather use AI to add maximum value to the organization and to help us take decisions. That's what it needs to be used for. I don't have much to add. I think you've said it all. You need to be updated. And you need to capture new talent that provides new things and adds new things to conversations, like when you meet new people, because there were 4 continents talking over dinner. New things crop up in conversations. The same goes for the board. I think this is the path to follow. Teresa, what do new board directors need to be? How do they need to be? What's the board of directors going to be like 5 years from now? I don't know, but it perhaps needs to be very dynamic and needs to keep an eye on what's happening externally, keeping into contact with youngsters, being very proactive, looking at best practices, bad practices, and looking at those markets that are far more advanced than ours to be able to learn from them and apply what they've learned. I don't have anything to add. I've said everything. It is true that we're in a very dynamic market. We don't know what's going to be happening 5 years from now. We need to be at the cutting edge, see what's being done in new markets, and consider that in the future. I'd like to have member of the board in my startup. I think if this is true or not, but I think it's in New Zealand that there's a board where all women, but with what the people that spoke before me have also said I agree with, but I wanted just to add something. We need to be, just because we need to go fastly, it doesn't mean to say we shouldn't think. That's where the difficulty lies. That's why I spoke about sustainable knowledge. That's why I spoke about the fear that youngsters have of using things, because they've been given very operational, tactical training with the fact that they need to be very practical. And however, if you've been given a pattern, then you can be less fearful. Whatever happens, all board members need to train themselves continually to adapt, to have open minds. And as Seneca said, the only thing I know is I don't know anything. That's the only thing that has come to mind now. And it's true. The more things you know, the more you realize how much more you need to learn. So, working a great deal, Juanjo. How do we apply all of this new technology, this new AI agent technology? We're only just beginning, yes. I think today the challenge of the boards in the companies of our surroundings is not so much in agents, but rather in diversity, in continuous self-assessment, and who should be added to the board and who should be removed from the board. Because here we have boards that talk a lot about technology because the future's arrived. And on many of the boards, you look at the past, look at directors that have spent many, many years in the same board, that are looking at the past all the time, that are only trained in finance. I always say that being a member of a board is a subject, and being a member of a board means that you need to keep your lights on, you need to advise, and keep yourself updated, and and question continually whether you are adding value or not. Technology is a facilitator of all of this, but it's not technology for me. The first thing, and I insist, in the boards that I'm advising at the moment, well, we haven't started with technology. We talk about many, many other things, reports from directives that should be more strategic. There is still a lot to be done without forgetting that technology is a facilitator. So we've only got 5 minutes. Please, could you give me an inspiring sentence from the board of entrepreneurs? What do you think is most relevant for future governance? Just a simple sentence. I think we're probably going to all say the same thing. Work, work, and work. And adaptation, an open mind, and education.
Voy a ser la segunda, por si acaso a alguien se le ha ocurrido esta frase.
I'll be the second person. When I started to be an entrepreneur, my idea was not to, I need to be as much as I can to try to be perfect, but I don't need to be perfect before I start. So I encourage all youngsters to get out onto the market and get moving. Don't forget customers, and you need to be profitable. Irache?
No sé, que el consejo, la gobernanza es liderazgo.
Governance is leadership, is a question of taking decisions continually with a great deal of uncertainty and without data, and boards are there to add value.
Empresas que a veces no se ven con un consejo pueden apoyarse, pueden encontrar el cómo tener ese
And
consejo.
smaller companies can actually also find out how to have a board without that being too expensive. Thank you so much, all of you, directors. Do we have a video from Maria Antonia?
No, para atrás, ¿no?
Sí.
¿O no está? No está. Pues parece ser que no está, entonces vamos a obviarlo.
We're going to leave that out. If we manage to get her video back, we will project it again. We've spoken about innovation, AI, speed, and risk. But in the end, everything comes together in the same thing. People taking decisions about the future of other people. Technology can speed up. AI can optimize, but only diverse, brave, purposeful leadership can govern the future responsibly. As you said, best technology of this century is human technology, because the companies that lead tomorrow won't be the ones that have the most data, but rather the ones that have the best criteria, something that can be built every day in boards of directors.
Tiene la palabra, muchas gracias por la ponencia, por la mesa redonda, y tiene la palabra
Thanks
Silvia
for your
Tomillo.
talk. I'm now going to hand the floor over to Silvia Tomillo, who's CEO of AGM Global and Special Counselor for Administrative Modernization at Valladolid.
Bueno, pues buenas tardes a todos, autoridades.
Good afternoon, civil and military and academic authorities.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias, Teresa, por haberme invitado.
Thanks, Teresa, for inviting me here. It's a pleasure and a matter of pride to be able to spend some time with you. I'm going to tell you a very personal story. Teresa asked me to talk about my personal experience and how a businesswoman ended up working for a city council in the public sector. And if you'd have said to me 4 years ago, which is the time that I've spent in political life, I'd have laughed, not because I feel distant from politics, because actually being an entrepreneur is something that gobbles up your life. AGM Global, by the way, is a telecommunications engineering company. It's got a spin-off called Velia Metrics, where we work in IoT and where we get involved in precision agriculture as well. And that's where we put all our innovation and knowledge to serve using technology. I started being an entrepreneur not via a huge pitch, nor getting some millions that rained down from heavens. It was really, really tough at the beginning. Very, very complicated, my situation. We ended up owed a lot of money, and we then moved on to telecommunications, and we changed our business model. I don't like the word entrepreneur because it gives you a sort of a romantic value of what an entrepreneur is. We have the responsibility for creating all sorts of things. And if you use an entrepreneur's viewpoint within a city council, for example, in my case, the Valladolid City Council changes the way you govern. And I don't have a great deal of political ties. The person who's currently mayor of Valladolid knows me because I was a pain in the past. Because from the private sector, I always complained about the local authorities. Sometimes we try to help, of course. But the real situation is the administration is imposed upon us. And therefore, it should be invisible for the public. And it's our responsibility as a government to assist rather than to hinder public. And that's what I try to do. When I created my company, we had some very bad payers. And that's when I realized how much it costs to pay people's salaries. You know from the word go that that's going to be like. And also this client owed us lots of money that we needed to survive. And to be sustainable, as Andrea said, sustainability needs to be first the economic sustainability of business. And I work in the world of agriculture and sustainability. And the first sustainability that business needs is economic sustainability. And from that, create circular economies. Having said that, I was called by Laura. She's the first person who I hired. And she said to me, "Is everything okay, Sylvia?" And I said, yeah, it's fine, don't worry. It's okay, we'll be fine. But I hung up and I looked at the phone and I said, she's bound to have noticed it. And that changed the way I see business and the way I see things in general, because a CEO is an invisible support, it's trust, it's managing the uncertainty of workers. And this is something that entrepreneurs or business men and women need. That's our mission. And this mission precisely is what makes me understand that businesses are a purpose beyond earning money. And as Teresa said, businesses have a mission that's broader than economics. And this very simple question is something which is so contradictory as the public is mixed up with private in my case, which is what are we here for? Why wouldn't a business person get involved with politics? Talking to people and explain why, what sort of problems we have. That's why I'm in City Council. People feel that this is contradictory. They've been shocked by it. I mean, it's a bit of an odd question. And I think Ángel Nieto, who's from the Madrid regional government, and myself, we're the only two business people that have actually spent part of their lives in the administration. In the previous panel session, Immaculata spoke about infrastructures. I like to say that we, telecommunications company, are invisible to people's eyes because that's where we should be. But without infrastructures, things wouldn't work. And that's how everything that the welfare state and everything that we enjoy from the welfare state is born, our quality of life. Remember when there was a blackout? The blackout was, you'd have thought, years ago, but it wasn't that long ago. We telecoms engineers worked for many, many years, but I think in 48 hours, just 2 days, we had to restart base stations. But for me, it was great to see it from the private side of things. And there were no possibilities in Spain to do so, but in the public sector, it was interesting to see. It was interesting to see how communications worked, how health personnel, police officers, and many others were still able to communicate, and nothing was lost. So I think we need to showcase all the work that our colleagues did, and in fact, two apparently different worlds at a time of crisis became one. And that's why many people, when they say to me, oh, these are very different worlds, I say, no, actually, they're the same worlds, because actually what links me to both is a vocation to serve. In English, the word is civil servant. And in my opinion, just like in politics and in companies, our titles, the title that we have, our posts, are things that we need to leave behind. These are things that you should receive without pride and be able to leave behind without becoming attached to them, because it's our mark that we've left on people that's really important. If that has helped in my life, if I've been able to help one person or leave my city a little bit better than it was, then I should be thankful, because serving is the origin of all of this. And I am very thankful to my family, to my university, to my city for the possibilities they've given me as an entrepreneur, as a member of the public. Because at the end of the day, the only thing we can do is return a little bit of what we've been given. And everybody that's here today are very, very privileged, and we have a tremendous responsibility, which is return that good luck. So if my short history, both publicly and privately, has been valid for something, I will be happy. That's my story. I hope some of you in the future are called to become people that work in the public sector. Sometimes we citizens complain a lot, but actually it's really difficult to manage things. Resources are very scarce because these decisions that have tremendous impact need to be taken responsibly. And I think we entrepreneurs, nobody knows more than about responsibility than we do. That's the truth. Because we need to be very careful. And that's reality. So thank you for inviting me. I hope to be able to see you shortly in Valladolid. It's a place to be. Entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs are very, very welcome. For two reasons, because this is very welcome. And I think it's important to recognize the work that you're doing. It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Teresa. And now, as people have come that are very, very brilliant, I've been asked to introduce the next panel session, which is what new talent do we need in the AI era? I'm going to project a video by Susana Solis, who's an MEP.
Hola a todos. Lo primero, deciros que me da mucha pena no poder estar hoy acompañando.
I apologize for not being able to be with you this afternoon in Bilbao, especially this your 10th anniversary of Inspiring Women Leaders. Thanks, especially to Teresa Alarcos, for allowing me to participate in this forum, although it may be remotely. I've been lucky enough to be there on previous occasions, and I've also been lucky enough to also receive the winners from the women's startup community at the European Parliament. So at a time when innovation is a priority for the EU, we need more women entrepreneuring, being entrepreneurs in the digital world. And this debate that you're going to be holding about new talent that's necessary in the AI era is more important than ever. I'm sorry not to be there. Enjoy this debate. Thank you for your work, and I'm hoping to have you back here again soon in Brussels.
Bueno, pues vamos a dar paso a Julia Díaz otra vez.
We're going to hand the floor back to Julia.
Nos hagas la ponencia, Julia. Muchísimas gracias.
Bueno, Julia Díaz y por favor a todos los compañeros, ¿no? de la mesa.
And all of my colleagues for this panel session, Lucia, Luis, Laida, Clelia, and Leonor, please come up.
Silvia, muchísimas gracias por la presentación.
Silvia, thanks for the introduction. I think you may still remember me. My name is Julia Díaz, not Nuria Abalos, who's my colleague from Repsol. Unfortunately, she can't be here, so I'm in charge of data science at Repsol. I lecture at the Autonomous University in Madrid and others. And I've got a degree in maths, a PhD in computer engineering, and I also spent time at a business school. So I'm a future candidate for any board of directors that requires me. For me, it's an absolute pleasure. I haven't put my timer here. I'm hoping that we won't go over our time, but it's great to be at this panel session. I've got Lucia González Llorente, who's the co-founder of Nexira, Luis Carvala, a partner at Egon Sender, Laida Monares.
La juventud acumulada quiere decir que hablas de tú o tú con la presbicia. Perdón, Laida Monares, que es líder de
Laida Monares, who's head of operations and IT at e-commerce marketing and sales. Clelia Morales, who's co-founder of Olida Care, and Lena Salomon, who's Executive Leader of Banking and FinTech. So there's a lot of talent here. We're going to be talking about talent. But to close the previous talk, we're going to now talk about the profiles that are required in AI, and you'd be surprised that legal teams have a lot to say when we get into the world of AI, because they have to help us with contracts and to make sure we meet regulations. Of course, the cybersecurity teams that need to guarantee that the environments where they're working meet the rules and regulations, and there's no information leaks. And of course, IT people have to make sure that things are where they should be, in the cloud or wherever they want to. And of course, human resources as well. Human resource teams have to get all this information across to all the company's employees. And I'm going to close with the auditing team, because all companies need to have a risk map where AI sounds awful that we talk about it as a risk, but we need to label things appropriately to do things as best as possible. So,
pero se me ha perdido ahora mismo todo porque yo tenía aquí, bueno, pues nada, tenía aquí el tenía aquí los papeles, tenía también aquí mi reloj, ¿no? Para no pasarme de tiempo, pero sobre todo tenía mis preguntas, ¿no?
I had some questions here, and the questions we spoke about talent. Now we're talking about AI, the incorporation of generative AI, and from our leadership outlook, what sort of talent do we need? Who should we be attracting? Thank you so much. That's teamwork. This was Teresa's fault, who said that I had to control time. And I hadn't been able to coordinate three things at the same time. Can you please respond to this question about what is talent now? Is talent machines? Is talent people? And can you tell us a little bit about what you do regarding talent in your companies? Let's start with you. Firstly, thanks, Julia and Teresa. It's always a pleasure to be here. My name is Luis Carvajal, and I'm a partner at Egon Zehnder. We're known as headhunters, but actually what we do is we help companies develop talent. I'm an IT engineer. I've always liked technology. I still program. And I'm very near to the mentor world because I work at Ashoka. I'm one of the partners in Endeavour as well. So I spent a lot of time working on talent and talent-related technology. When everybody talks about the new roles of talent in the digital era, I think what's changed radically is everybody thinks of specific posts that are going to arrive, but what actually is changing are current posts, current roles, and where leadership is going to be even more important, because at a time when people learn slower than machines, and that means that we need to change the way we go about things. We talk about leadership, but actually leadership requires lots of different ways of acting. What we need to learn, what we need to unlearn, how we need to work differently, how we need to collaborate with machines, how we're going to be able to have to do things when there's no precedent. How are we going to be able to defend the future and not delegate roles? Clelia, can you give us your viewpoint? Yes. I'm Clelia Morales. I have a startup related to women's health. My first startup was 10 years ago on fertility. And thanks to that startup, we managed to help 200,000 women to fall pregnant, and I'm now working in the field of menopause transition, and we're using AI and remote medicine together to do so. To give you my viewpoint, that you started really well talking about the different teams that can be affected and use AI. Imagine a startup where there are just 4 of us, literally 4 of us, with the support of a remote medicine team. And we're seeing that all these processes are making tremendous strides forward. I agree with what you said about talent. I think that now as leaders that help teams grow, you need to remember that in a startup we need to be very careful about who joins, because they need to join and add value quickly, and a lot of it. And I think AI is going to help us with this. Personally, I feel that there's a lot of transformations ahead. There will be new roles, but also how do we adapt, and how can we get our teams to adapt? How can we recruit people? What soft skills will these people need? And I also think that artificial intelligence isn't something that's going to remove talent. And we have a responsibility to see how people think and make decisions and ensure that the pilot isn't the co-pilot.
Mi experiencia tiene que ver incluso con mi historia.
My experience is actually related to my story. The issue of leadership in AI is related to multifunctional teams. Unlike many people from here, I don't come from the area of technology. I come from the area of sales. When I was asked to move into technology, my first reaction was, I don't know anything about IT, and even less than about AI. And that's why they said to me precisely, you can become a bridge between our end users, and you will be the bridge into the technology area. As we can see now, at least clearly these teams, the multifactional people that bring new experience, add to everything in new technology that allows you to move far more quickly in business. Noelia, can you close? Hi, Leonor. Thanks so much, Teresa and Julia. I'm a systems engineer. I worked for 30 years in Santander Bank, and then I remember I started talking about the first technological things that were a challenge for the bank, a bank that had bought other banks when guidance was just to get a project. But the first thing we said, we needed to have a customer database. We called it the cleaning and merging of customers' names. And you find that in some cases you've got the name, the middle name with a dot after it, then the surname, and some didn't have the second surname. So we use this software to identification. We call that scrubbing of all our data to try to add birth date at the same address. But the surprise was that back in that distant past, we found that there were customers that had different addresses for different kinds of correspondence for personal reasons. So now, at a time of AI, we need to have a human criteria. If it's the same customer, we can't just have everything in one address. For example, if their siblings are joint holders, but they don't want these banking cards to be sent to a specific address. So when we talk about talent, what we need is collaboration between humans and machines. We need this kind of management supervision, this strategic supervision to decide where AI should come in, what should be automated and what shouldn't. We need ethics codes, what can be changed and what can't. Where can I should I ask for authorization from a customer to change a data? For example, it says the Red Cross, and the Red Cross appears as a physical person. Well, that's just not true. So what criteria do you have to add here? Would you have to follow? I've got several examples of that, but I'm not going to talk about it. But yes, carry on talking, Leonor, please, because the leadership model and the management model is different nowadays. We've spoken about talent, multidisciplinary teams, but also technology, because talent is now mixed with technology. How do you think on new technical lead or project managers? What are they? Do they have an additional challenge? Yes, undoubtedly. You need to coordinate. Depending upon the business strategy, you need to communicate with your business area. I'm also thinking about fraud cases. You have to have somebody who can choose priorities, what has greater economic impact, where should you invest. We knew a very painful case of a woman who'd, because of the death of her husband, had received resources. She went to the bank and suddenly somebody filtered the information and she was taken to 10 branches to remove the money. And there was no way of returning the money to her because every one of those withdrawals had been signed. If we had AI, and which said, hey, you know, this woman doesn't normally go to different branches. She doesn't do these she doesn't usually take this amount of money out. You can immediately stop things. If you can detect value for the customer and for the institution, that's where you need the talent of a leader, so that they have visibility, so that they can be linked to the business, the technological side of things, and so that they can organize teams and how you can access information. You should also define how information is confidential and who should access what, because on many occasions these frauds are influenced by people who are inside, in-house. What about you? How do you see this a new model of leadership? Yes, we need people from IT who know about the business, but who know it from the inside out. How our consumers live, so that then can return and develop everything they need, whether they be agents, new solutions, tools, and on the other side, the same thing to make sure that information travels in both directions. I think today this is the challenge, having these bridges, these translators that go in both directions to be able to accelerate digitalization and AI use. There are still undoubtedly many, many things that need to be discovered. I agree that the legal area needs to be there from the beginning, working with us and working on governance. But of course, once again, it's the diversity of different people and the way they can contribute different things that's help us face things. If you said earlier that in a startup you need to get the right talent immediately, have you seen any progress with the advent of generative AI? Yes, actually quite a lot. Firstly, it gives us the opportunity to concentrate on a patient. It don't have to be an Olida patient. Generative AI, from what you mentioned with this timeline that you showed us and how racks work, this means that you can respond to a question coming from a woman, whether it be now, 3 in the morning, 11 at night, or 6 in the morning, it doesn't matter. You can be there with quality content and respond to that person's questions. And in our case, our intelligence doesn't diagnose, it's not in the diagnostic area, but it can accompany. And from a team viewpoint, it means that we can ask ourselves where we're spending time. Can we really renounce these processes and accept that they're better done by a machine, and we spend our time taking decisions? And everything that you spoke about regarding project managers, they have that mentality, and they say, oh, and this used to be really important and it took 50% of my time, but now I can use technologies and AI, and it's only going to occupy 5 or 10% of my time, and I can spend my time on something that adds a lot more value. And this is something that always benefits our patients, and also how I can attract junior members of the team and help those members grow. That's how we are seeing things clearly, and it's a very positive way. Luis, your viewpoint as a headhunter. What I'm seeing here is that people are concentrating on the technological side of things, but we seem to forget that it's not only the technological side of things. There's an MIT study recently said that only 5% of companies invest in AI, thinking there's going to be a real impact on the company, because the AI impact is actually a multiplier of your organization. Of course, your data, infrastructure, architecture, and technology multiplied by your technology multiply the company's culture. And everybody seems to think the side of culture and talent. So AI doesn't add, it multiplies. And this is very, very different. It means that we work differently. Culture means how we work together. Some people, if they work in silos, all AI is going to do is multiply those silos. So my obsession is to help, but it doesn't only affect the technology team, but the whole of the leadership team. They need to be the change agents for changing a culture's technology. And the companies that are beginning to realize this, realize that it's not necessarily a person that understands technology. They need to understand a sufficient technology, but it doesn't need to be the IT person. They are the bridge. They're the bridge that help pinpoint ethical controls, quality controls, talent. Those are the ones that drive a radical change in an organization. This is something which is only coming very, very slowly. We're currently in the time of AI agents. I saw a company a year and a half ago. We should have invested there. They were from San Francisco and they developed software. They said, oh, we've got 400 employees, 300 humans. And this actually now is worth 1.5 billion. They're called cognition.ai. They've developed Debbing, which is a specific program. And the organizational way of doing things, what does it mean if you're 400 employees and 30 of them are human? That just changes automatically the way you think. So we're really only at the beginning of this. Along the lines of the comment that you made, if we read in the press that with generative AI, junior talent's going to disappear or going to be replaced. But we also read that with generative AI, people can learn a lot quicker, but senior staff act as a blockage, but there's no AI that gets 100% something right. So when we talk about generative AI, and we talk about traditional AI, by the way, we talk about mistakes, business mistakes or technical mistakes, absolute mistakes, and business mistakes. 2 degrees here, 3 euros there. But when we talk about generative AI, we're talking about hallucinations. Generative AI gets things wrong. They hallucinate. And juniors can learn rapidly, but actually seniors may have a blockage because they say, hey, hang on a minute, somebody needs to correct this. But a senior can use generative AI. What's your opinion about juniors and seniors? That's an interesting question, but I think, as I said, AI multiplies, it doesn't add. So from a senior talent is where you can get most from, because the conversation is far richer, because senior researchers in research companies, you can get more information than from junior. But it's a problem, but also an opportunity, because in lawyers' offices, I said, many of them say they've got 4,000 employees of these lawyers firm. They do a lot more. It was like in the past they were just working. And so they develop partners. I had to change this model when I say you're just doing the hard work. Now they no longer do that. They're now using AI to get faster results. They turn from becoming employees that have to do things to employees that think. They have to review the input and the output, and that's changing the learning model. This happens in lawyers' firms, in software development firms, in many companies that are pyramid-shaped. Has the way you hired people changed? Has generative AI changed the way you hire people? Yes, clearly. But there's something that sometimes we forget. And I don't mind about that, because I worked in a multinational company for many years, which is the responsibility that we have to hire junior staff. I think that we've always had the responsibility that we need to make their work interesting, and interns, otherwise you don't want to lose these interns, otherwise you lose wasting your time and your money. So I think now with AI, this is clearly far more clear, rather, because many people had jobs that could have been considered boring, but now they need to be taught to take decisions. So this criteria that we need to apply needs to apply it at the bottom and at the top. An issue of education. I've got 2 teenagers at home. One is 18, and I'm just concentrating on their soft skills. How can we get them to learn soft skills? Because that's what's going to make them progress. And I see there are many loopholes in education, because this is something that they need to learn from when they're tiny. If we've just taught them to learn things by rote memory, then how can they ever make progress? And we, from home, we need to help them change that, because not all have the possibility of changing. And this isn't something you can change. I think it's really important to make our interns grow. And we as seniors know what it means to be up to date with AI, and know that generative AI is a co-pilot, and you have to guide them, you have to take decisions. So when we talk about this cultural side of things, it doesn't matter the size of the company. This is cross-cutting for everybody. Junior, senior, how does it affect? I think that models change. What I see today now is this new generations actually are here to teach seniors, and vice versa. Simply, for example, a senior person saying, look, I spend a lot of time in looking at my emails and they just keep coming in, and that's why I can't progress. And suddenly an intern said, I can create an agent to create a table for you, so rapidly in the morning they can update it and you can program it. And you said, seriously, can you do that? Of course it can be done. So today she learns also from this person all this side of governance, the why of things. This coincides with soft skills that are necessary, and everything that senior people have provides new generations with, and new generations come to inject this dynamic method, because they are native, digital natives, so they are also a generational bridge, so that learning goes in 2 directions. Leonor, can you close with your experience? Juniors and seniors. also becomes relevant because juniors are the executives of tomorrow. And so it's better that they have their notion of business that they have. And I think that everything that everybody's said, the only thing that perhaps I could add is invite these interns to collaborate closer. So leadership style should change because you're no longer a supervisor checking that you do task A, but you're actually being invited to collaborate so that things can be more efficient or more collaborative. It's not just a matter of replacing collaborative process with an automatic one. We haven't spoken about data science much, what data they have access to, how can they understand patterns from many, many data, starting with the basic. Juniors need to understand business and know what they're seeking out. That's where we need to be more mentors and help them grow. We had many, many more questions. The thing is, Teresa's told me that we're out of time. Thanks to my colleagues, thanks to Teresa for not having told me to stop, and let's now move on to the next panel. Well, it's not a panel, actually. It's a talk. I'd like to ask Margarita Pardo, Colonel from the Army, to tell us about how you can lead in uncertain times and what opportunities are out there. Thank you so much.
Bueno, pues buenas tardes a todos. Lo primero que quiero hacer es dar las gracias a Teresa por haberme
Firstly,
invitado.
thanks, Teresa, for inviting me. And secondly, I'd like to apologize because after having been here all this time, I have serious doubts that I can actually contribute to this forum in from such a different environment that I come from. I've seen a lot of skills, talent, and experience this afternoon. The only thing that I can contribute, I think, is my personal experience in.
¿Cuál ha sido mi experiencia profesional en el ámbito militar?
In the military. And just a few indications that can perhaps be helpful. From a leadership viewpoint, of course, in our field, there's a lot of uncertainty and there are difficult times as well. And I joined the Army in 1993. I come from a family that has a long history in the military. When I said I wanted to be to join the military, it was like I dropped a bomb. And because my father said to me, what are you going to do? I mean, if you want a family, etc. And I said, well, this is my vocation. I don't know if I'll have a family or not, but this is my vocation. So I sat the public exams to be a member of the Army. I spent times in the military academy in Zaragoza and in Segovia to become artillery lieutenant. There were 5 very tough years. I had to adapt to a new world. It was the first year that there were more than 1 female officers in the whole of the promotion, a lot of physical demands and a lot of learning, and also a lot of support. And also companionship, friendship, camaraderie. And I'd say we need to all follow our calling, all follow our vocation, and do as much as possible to make that happen. It's not easy. And sometimes you have to fight to show how you can contribute to society. I went to Cordoba, and then there was a helicopter, a pilot course cropped up, and I decided I'd also join that. I was once again the only woman on the course, so I got involved in a whole new world that I didn't know about, and I loved it. I was very excited about it. A whole year learning of flight techniques, aerodynamics, many, many subjects in a different environment that I was used to, and including everything that I liked, which is how this can be integrated into the maneuver and how we take part in a tactic mission. And when I finished my course, I was destined to this Chinook helicopter. It's huge. It's the best helicopter on the face of the earth. And I was lucky to pilot these helicopters and participate in missions to launch parachutists, special missions, the whole variety. And when I was flying in Galicia, when the Prestige accident happened, I was called by a colleague and they said to me, do you know where Macedonia is? Well, get ready because that's where you're going. So I had to go as an intelligence analyst on a mission to Macedonia in a NATO.
Aprender de lo que es un conflicto, de cómo cambia una sociedad, porque como analista de inteligencia recorrí muchísimas
barracks, and I had to see in different societies the different situation of different peoples and see firsthand what happens when a conflict is generated and how it's so difficult to rebuild society afterwards. And this should help us think about how we build our societies and try to avoid the situations that lead to these conflicts. I carried out on working as a pilot, and our battalion was told that we had to go to Afghanistan. This is the first time that Chinook were taken to Afghanistan, at least from Spain. It was a challenge. You had to take the Chinooks there. Just deploying was a logistic challenge. I was lucky enough to be in the preparation team, how we were going to operate, and it was a fantastic mission. I was there as head of operations, so I had to design operations where our helicopters were going to fly, what support we were going to be giving to units that were deployed. It was a change in the way we saw the operation in Afghanistan. That was when people said how you had to win the hearts and minds of the Afghans. That meant that we went out of our barracks and threats got increasingly, because their lives were in our hands. So this decision that you have to take needs to be based on everything that you've done previously in the preparation, having studied and having spent time preparing yourself to have sufficient criteria in international field with other interests in other countries in other languages, and get used to change. We had heavy snow on the 5th of January, and that snow ended in March. And the Afghans' homes just collapsed, and we had to send assistance by helicopters. We weren't prepared to fly in snow, but you need to be resilient and adapt and implement the mission. I was then went to commander. I then did a master's in security and defense, and then I was put in the Army's chief of staff. And you need to be really aware of your daily effort. You actually now realize that actually you're there to advise, so that the chief of staff is taking the appropriate decisions. And as a commander, I had to go on another mission, this case to Mali, in an EU mission to Bamako, where my task was to instruct the people of Mali, who were in the south of Mali, and the Mali people were fighting in the north in the desert. We had to instruct the people of Mali in tactical efforts. At the time, the people from Mali didn't have money for their units to go to Bamako, so we went around the whole country to try to find new training possibilities. It was brilliant. It had the support of a Spanish general who managed to do a lot of work there. And what am I there for? To try to contribute, to try to make sure that I serve. And from Lieutenant Colonel, I was then given the privilege of heading my Chinook battalion. There are over 300 people in the battalion, 16 Chinook. We were in Iraq, and what's more, during COVID times. So here you are a benchmark for the whole of the unit. You're the ones who say how things should be done during uncertain times. Because for mission in Iraq, we were prepared. We were prepared for that, so that we were given a mission and we met it. But now you find that you have to take health material. You don't know if your people are going to be infected. And how can you contribute? Firstly, by setting an example. The example that we give every day. We don't have to do major things or strange things, but so that people can see that every morning you are the first person in being in the barracks, in contributing, in giving ideas, in listening to people. This coherence in this example is something that you take with you. And the next thing that's important is team. None of us are vital. It's the team that needs to go together. I liked hearing what you said, teaching those that are coming. We in the army are always instructing individuals to form a team. We need to train. It's the only way we can give people the correct job for their abilities. That's the most difficult thing to do. In this more recent stage, there's been a radical change. I've hung up my boots and left the mud, and we're now in the king's household. Once again, I needed to adapt to also think about loyalty, because loyalty isn't always towards those that are above you, but also those below you, because that loyalty actually creates trust. Because when people have their lives at risk, provided they trust what you're telling them, because you risk, and because you're a coherent person, you risk this trust, means that they will follow you wherever you happen to be. So I may be saying things that are obvious and things that don't contribute a great deal to this forum, but I'm hoping that they are helpful. And the final thing that I want to say is important, and everybody's spoken about business. I think that to perform in our daily work, we need to have our backs covered. That means our families, our loved ones. For me, my main achievement is that I am married. I have 5 children. That's the biggest achievement that I've made. My biggest success story. And that they also set example to me, because I'm abroad on many occasions, but they see that my commitment to Spain, my daily service is important, that they see that we all have to give the best of ourselves every day. Thank you so much.
Usamentiaga, presidenta de la Fundación Euskaltel. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, arratsaldeon eta mila esker hemen egoitegatik. Decía Margarita que no sabía qué podía añadir después de haber escuchado todo lo que hemos escuchado. Yo, después de escucharte a ti, Margarita, tengo clarísimo lo que puedo hacer, que es ser breve. Y tengo clarísimo también que soy lo que separa a todos de poder salir a disfrutar de una ciudad tan preciosa como es Bilbao y de una jornada que mañana promete ser también súper interesante. Con esta premisa que pienso cumplir, que es ser muy breve en lo que voy a compartir con vosotros, quisiera decir 2 cosas, quedarme con 2 ideas principales. La primera es que estamos en un momento de disrupción tecnológica y yo creo que eso lo hemos visto prácticamente desde todas las perspectivas. Muchas de las disrupciones las hemos vivido en la manera en que tenemos de relacionarnos, de trabajar, de disfrutar del ocio, también del acceso a los servicios públicos, pero creo que esa disrupción tecnológica ha llegado también con mucha claridad a las industrias y todas se encuentran en un momento u otro de transformación y siendo conscientes de que los retos son diferentes. El origen de todo esto yo creo que tiene que ver mucho o prácticamente todo con la digitalización. La digitalización ha convertido necesariamente todas nuestras relaciones en globales. Hace no tantos años Hace varios meses hablábamos de globalización con toda normalidad y en esa globalización había un cierto equilibrio inestable que nos permitía enfocarnos a cada territorio del mundo en una cosa diferente. A partir de ahora lo que nos encontramos es que ese equilibrio se ha roto. Debe ser mi territorio. Ese equilibrio se ha roto y las distintas partes del mundo se han enfocado en cosas diferentes. Unos se han enfocado en ser la fábrica del mundo y en aprender además mucho de tecnología, otros se han enfocado en inteligencia artificial y nuestra parte del mundo, que es Europa, se ha encontrado en una situación de desventaja competitiva una vez que ese equilibrio global se rompe y empezamos a hablar de otras cosas distintas. Y creo que es el momento de reforzarnos, de hablar de seguridad de muchas maneras. Margarita hablaba de seguridad y de tener las espaldas cubiertas. Yo creo que son todos nuestros ámbitos de actividad. La ciberseguridad no deja de ser eso, también tener nuestras espaldas cubiertas y volver a reindustrializarnos y tener soberanía para ser autónomos. Y en todo eso es en lo que se tiene que centrar Europa. La semana pasada se publicaban 2 textos muy importantes que van a marcar el futuro de este territorio en el que vivimos. Y yo quiero subrayar que más allá de las divergencias y de la manera distinta de ver las cosas, hay algo que tenemos que tener clarísimo, que lo que se vaya a decidir hay que decidirlo bien, pero de manera rápida. No podemos estar pensando las cosas 3 años, porque dentro de 3 años esas reflexiones habrán quedado obsoletas. Hay que tener la flexibilidad, la adaptabilidad, que también hablábamos de eso, para saber tomar decisiones formadas, rápidas, implantarlas y si nos equivocamos, corregir rápidamente. Esa era mi primera idea. La segunda que quiero compartir tiene que ver con lo que venimos a hablar hoy, ¿no? De Inspiring Women, y aquí hemos visto a muchísimas mujeres inspiradoras y al hablar de talento femenino, a mí me gustaría acabar con una nota positiva, que seguramente mañana se continuará reflexionando sobre eso. En un momento de disrupción tecnológica yo creo que las mujeres nos encontramos en una posición creo que interesante y importante. Si miramos a las revoluciones industriales anteriores, ni hubiéramos soñado en encontrarnos en posiciones como las que hoy en día disfrutamos, ¿no? Hoy encontramos mujeres líderes políticas y las hemos visto aquí, líderes industriales también han estado aquí, líderes en sectores financieros, también hemos compartido esas visiones, pero tenemos que asegurar esa posición también en el nuevo entorno digital. El nuevo entorno digital va a requerir todo tipo de talentos, especialmente si hablamos de Europa. El envejecimiento de la población quiere decir que nuestros recursos son escasos, no podemos prescindir del 50% de la población. Pero no podemos dar nada por sentado. Que hoy tengamos unas posiciones interesantes no suficientes no significa que nos podamos relajar. Y depende fundamentalmente de nosotras. Nuestra necesidad de seguir trabajando constantemente, de seguir aprendiendo, de seguir levantando la mano y ser vocales, y de seguir siendo capaces de aportar a la sociedad para tener un futuro mejor y ojalá desde una perspectiva europea, porque yo creo que aportamos desde Europa una visión humanista que el mundo merece la pena disfrutar, ¿no? Y ese quizás pueda ser el rol que juega Europa, ¿no? Servir de puentes, de construir ese futuro juntos. Esa puede ser nuestra aportación. Cuando no jugamos a ser líderes de nada, quizás es una buena posición la nuestra para ser árbitros humanistas, ojalá que de un futuro más optimista y un futuro mejor. Así que con esto lo dejo, prometí ser breve y creo que lo he cumplido. Espero que mañana disfrutéis tanto como hoy de las jornadas y de esta preciosa universidad, que es la mía, por cierto, y por eso este evento para mí es especialmente interesante, motivante y ilusionante. Gracias.